Hello and welcome into the Cubs on Deck podcast. I am one of your hosts. My name is Greg Huss, and today I am joined by my co-host and other Greg Zumach. How's it going, buddy?
Hey, it's going fantastic. It's been a really good week to start Cubs baseball. We're kicking in the draft as well. This is a good time to be talking about things, so I'm happy to jump on with you.
Yeah, we're thriving right now. We just experienced the first actual week. I mean, Brian and I talked last week about the AAA team, so we threw some love Matt Mervis and even Christopher Morel and Nelly Velasquez, all those guys' way. But man, this week it just felt like we were back. You know, it felt like everything was back. I had multiple games going on, multiple screens happening. Like it was minor league baseball. I was taking it all in. I was loving it, man. I loved this past week so much.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun. Like I forgot how much I really dig. Okay, so we'll get to this, I'm sure, right? Like in passing conversation, but I will say that I forgot how much I dig looking forward to the starting pitchers every day. And in past years, we'd be lucky, right? We'd be like, oh man, this guy's throwing. That's the only thing I'm watching. Maybe I'll tune in for Kevin Alcantara, but I've got this guy on. And now it's like, well, shoot, I've got multiple screens. I'm trying to look at my phone. I've got 3 guys I'm trying to watch at the same time. I'm loving this. This feels like ages ago when we used to do this.
It feels like every year it's getting harder and harder to tune in to 1 or 2 games on a nightly basis. Where in the past it's all right, we got this one starting pitcher going tonight that I really want to see. I'm definitely tuning in to Tennessee or definitely tuning in to South Bend. And it's now we got games where 3 affiliates have a starting pitcher that I want to watch, and it makes it super difficult. So this past weekend, I was in the middle of I'm moving to a new house, and so I was in the middle of moving during the day. And so what I ended up doing was I went back, and at night I would just go back and watch the starts for each pitcher, and that made it super it was easier to do it that way for sure than listen to the game while I was moving furniture and stuff, and while family was over. I don't think they would have appreciated that all that much.
Yeah, I've tried to pull that off in the past. It definitely doesn't work very well. So no, that's exactly what I did too. I would try to watch one, but then even when I couldn't be doing that, I was just mostly just churning through games in the evening. And that was a ton of fun. And I'm sure we'll get to some of that discussion as well, but it was a blast.
Yeah. So honestly, I think that's a great place to start actually is the starting pitchers, because this week we saw a ton of super strong starting pitcher performances. Across all levels, really. I mean, from AAA down to low A, we saw really good pitching performances. I think that we'll probably dig in a little bit to each of these guys that I'm going to list off. Not super in depth because there's a lot of dudes, obviously. But we'll talk about Brandon Birdsell, Ben Brown, Luke Little had a really good start. Brody McCullough was really strong, which I love to see. Jordan Wicks, I really love to see that he had a really good performance.
Yeah.
And then Ryan Jensen and Riley Thompson up at the higher levels of the minors were also really, really impressive. Is there a guy that you want to start talking about first, Zumach?
I've only been able to catch half of Birdsell, so I don't want to jump in on that too much. I mean, you feel free to, because I think you've dug into it. But he was a guy that I had people tell me, hey, he was doing really well this spring. But the guy I wanted, so I'm looking forward to that. And I think just really quick with Birdsell, he was somebody that at last year's draft, when I would ask around, hey, what did you think? How do you think the Cubs did? And, I got good stuff on Horton and Ferris and, Pasiola, people liked, all guys that made sense. But a couple of the people that would consistently be Birdsell is no joke. That was a great pick. And I think we're seeing that now. He's the most advanced of any of the pitchers that we drafted last year. And you saw how he handled that lineup. I think, right? I don't think anybody is higher.
No, I expected. Well, I mean, I think
Hull or Noland. Someone's around
Noland.
There,
yeah. But I mean, you said we're not going to start off with Brandon Birdsell, but I think now that we're into it, let's go ahead and start with that. So I was actually over in Quad Cities on Sunday and saw Brandon Birdsell start over there. It was, first of all, awesome to take in a live Cubs minor league game. The ballpark over in Quad Cities is fun. It's terrific. Awesome. It was the first time ever being there, and the ballpark's right on the river. Literally right on the river. You go out and you can go around the entire ballpark when you're inside the stadium, and when you're out on looking over the right field fence into the stadium. If you turn around to a 180, like literally like the Riverwalk is right there, which is really cool. They got the Max Toma honorary Ferris wheel out in left field, all that good stuff. So it was it was fun vibes at that ballpark at Davenport. But anyways, I was there with fellow Northside Bound co-founder Todd Johnson was there, and we were chatting. We were sitting there watching Brandon Birdsell in the bullpen warming up before the game. And honestly, like the bullpen performance wasn't very good as he was getting warm. And I was sitting there chatting with Todd, and I was like, you know what they say, like if you have a poor performance in the bullpen before the game, that just means you're going to go out and perform really well during the game. And that's literally exactly what he did. He went out there and had 3 innings pitched, no hits, no runs, 4 strikeouts, and 2 walks. Really strong performance. It looked a little shaky the first couple innings, and then just really turned it on his in the last inning. Yeah, I think the thing that's most impressive to me with Birdsell, like he's got that short arm action, right? Where he throws from his ear. Like that is super short arm action. And that was a result of when he had surgery, TJ back in college, he kind of changed his arm action after that. And I think it's super deceptive when you're watching it. It's super quirky. You guys out there listening know how much I love quirky pitchers when they do weird things. We'll get into Brody McCullough here shortly. And yeah, it's just I think that he does something different, and that arm action's cool. He was out there popping mid-90s. I mean, he was hitting 95 on the stadium gun. Don't know how legitimate it was. I was asking Todd and some people how legit that gun was. They said it was legit. So seeing 95 on the gun from him was really impressive. So really liked what we saw from him in the game.
Yeah, he's got even more velo in the tank too. I mean, I think he's a guy that was regularly topping 97, 98. I don't have my pitch metrics from prior to the draft, but he was a guy that stood out for velocity, handled tough lineups. I mean, it's not a surprise. I think, yeah, he's a pick to click. I think that was a really, really savvy selection. And yeah, I mean, we're seeing the results now.
You want to stay in South Bend?
Yeah, you can stay in South Bend.
Let's go Luke Little. Luke Little next.
That's the guy I was going to jump into. So he was another one that I had people that were like, hey, these guys looked really good. Brandon Birdsell, Luke Little really stood out. And we saw that. I mean, Luke Little is a guy that already has monstrous like physicality. He's got velo. He's had the reported 104, and I don't know how legit that is, but we're talking 100 at least. From a left-hander, throwing 6'9", and in his not shtick, but his MO, the story on Luke Little in the professional ball is people can't hit him. He might walk a few guys, and I will say that he looked a lot better out there. Now, the Midwest is a tough place to hit, especially now. So I think that we got to factor that in a little bit here. But it was very difficult to hit. He didn't really walk too many people. He hit a guy. He had like 2 walks, I think it was.
2 walks.
2 walks. But the stuff looked good. He generated whiffs. And what I really want to see, I wasn't able to get like a ton of really good looks at it, is I want to see what that splitter looks like as we get a little bit further on into the summer.
Yeah, Luke Little's line was 4 innings pitched, 0 hits, like you said, unhittable. 0 earned runs, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks. So, I mean, it's if he can continue putting up. I think honestly, like we've gone on and on about Luke Little, is he a starter, is he a reliever? Like, if he can do that, like if he can do, I mean, obviously giving up no hits, but like say 4 innings, a few hits. And putting up like a similar line to that, like you don't need him to go 6+ innings. No. If he's performing that way over the course of 4 innings, I will take that every single day of the week.
Yeah, I mean that's a guy that if you want to, and I know this is not Cubs comp, and maybe we'll laugh a little bit about the background on this, but basically if you turn him into an Andrew Miller in 2015, 2016, 2017, where he's just a multi-inning incinerator coming out of the pen. I mean, maybe he starts. I mean, his repertoire is looking good, but like, that's nasty. That's insane. That's game changing. It was series changing in the playoffs in 2016. Obviously, the Cubs won. People forget that, but like, that was massive. So I love that like big, tall left-hander, wicked fastball, wicked slider. And then he, if he can start generating some whiffs with the splitter, oof, it's nasty.
Yeah, I think
Nasty stuff.
I've determined that I'm done for the time being having a conversation about starter versus reliever with him.
Yeah.
I think that it's not productive. Right now, the dude gets outs. He's the single most uncomfortable at bat in the system. I mean, just like his size,
Yeah.
his the arm angle he comes at you with, the heat that he throws, the slide. I think I think Palencia has better stuff, right?
Yeah.
I think that he has better stuff. I think that like I was actually talking with Todd about this, right? It was like you know how like guys like sit in on bullpens, like like position play hitters sit in on bullpens. Luke Little would be the last guy I'd want to sit in on a bullpen. If you're a lefty. I mean, I also would not want to sit on as a righty, but like as a lefty, it's just like it's impossible, right? So
yeah, no, it'd be nuts.
I'm done with the starter versus reliever for the time being. We can reapproach it in the offseason or whatever. But right now, just like appreciate how fun it is to watch Luke Little throw.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not one to judge because for our team, Huss team, Smith team, Zumach, I picked him as a reliever, but then I also named him my starter of the year or the pitcher of the year.
We let you get
really
away
only
with
goes
that
to starters.
Yeah, we let you get away with it.
I'm playing both sides that way I win either way.
But I think if we're talking about that transitions well into a guy I picked as a reliever in that same draft. I go back, if you guys have not listened to that episode, me, Greg, and Brian did a fantasy style draft of the system, episode number something. Go back a few episodes here and listen.
They tend to be.
Yeah. So Zumach, you had Luke Little as a reliever, quote unquote reliever on your team. I had Riley Thompson as a quote unquote reliever on my team.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know how the Cubs were going to use him. I didn't know if he was going to be if he would have started the year as a starter in Iowa, reliever in Iowa, starter in Tennessee, reliever in Tennessee, all four of those, I wouldn't have been surprised. I would have been like, oh, okay, that's fine. What they chose was a starter in Iowa, which is the most fun option. And he went out on he was early in the week. He went out and put up a 4 innings pitched, 1 hit, 1 earned run, 6 strikeouts, 1 walk performance. Really strong. Like he looked really, really good.
Absolutely.
And actually, let me pull up. I had a little thread from that performance. That day's worth of performance in the system was electric. The fastball with Riley Thompson is always going to be like it just needs to be good enough, in my opinion. I think the fastball just needs to be good enough because I think his slider is really, really good. He was using the slider more than what we saw him use it last year. The curveball I think the curveball's always been a strong offering for him, but he just needs to use it the right amount. Like he can't be out there using the curveball like 30 to 40% of the time. He needs to be using it like 10 to 15% of the time instead. And I think that's how that pitch succeeds because it's really good. You just can't use it all that often. And then the changeup that he offered on the 7th, which was a few days ago. Again, I think the changeup is good. He didn't use it very often, and that's another pitch where I think that he uses that as just kind of like another bag or another pitch in his bag of tricks, And then the fastball again was good enough on this day, and that's all you need to succeed if you're Riley Thompson.
Yeah, so early in the winter, I reached out to him because it was basically after the 40-man decisions, and I just kind of reached out to him, and I basically got the, hey, I'm working on some things. I was like, okay, cool. Didn't really get much into that. But what we found out later, and we have it on a piece at Northside Bound, is that he spent basically all winter at Cressy Sports Performance, which is a great place to be. He retooled his slider. It was always somewhat of this shape, but he retooled it, and I think I can say that. Oh yeah, it's in the piece. Is that he actually modeled it almost exactly off of what Justin Verlander's slider is. They have a very similar release. They have a very similar movement, and so he modeled it after Justin Verlander's slider, and he said he was getting really good action with it. His 2 big goals are to incorporate the sinker, which is very new for him still, and then that changeup. And it was funny because actually one of the first strikeouts that he got, I asked him, I was just like, hey, like, what is it an elevated sinker to a left-hander? Like, that's something like the Cubs will do, but that's kind of an advanced move. That's like a Kyle Hendricks, like elevated sinker, And he's like, no, I totally missed it as a changeup. But he just got the whiff on it. But we're going to start to see Riley Thompson where you can't just sit on one or two pitches because he's getting swing and miss on multiple, which is really, really fun.
Yeah, I'll go back a few years with Riley because I interviewed him when he was it was towards the beginning, middle of his 2019 season, when he was with South Bend. Super strong season for him in 2019, and then he dealt with injuries. But when he was in South Bend that year, I interviewed him mid-season, and I was asking about his repertoire a little bit, and he was talking about how he was starting to incorporate that changeup a little bit more. He was happy with it, but he was still getting the feel for it. And then Jimmy and I interviewed him on the podcast, on the Growing Cubs podcast, and that was after that season. And I said, hey, like what were your thoughts on that changeup you incorporated? And he goes, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was like, I thought it was pretty damn good. Like a lot of times you'll ask players and you're like, oh, like what do you think about like this pitch that you had? And they're like, oh, like it's good. Like I'm still working on some things. And he was like, man, that was good. It was a good pitch. I was like, I think that if you can have that sort of confidence with, and you have to have that sort of confidence with the changeup to throw it. I just really like what he brings to the table, and the fact that he's doing it in AAA. He did that in AAA. I'd love to see him get a shot in the big leagues this season.
I completely agree. I think that he's legitimately somebody that could come up, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, he went like 4 1/3 innings with like 7 Ks and a walk and 2 hits and 1 run, and you're like, damn, that's awesome. Like, holy crap.
Yeah.
So who's this guy? Well, if you follow us, I mean, I don't think Riley Thompson is an unknown name, but definitely be watching. I think he's in good form.
I think he's one of the more unknown names that we're covering here today, which is weird.
Yeah, but I could probably our Myrtle Beach name is going to be fairly unknown
for sure. So actually, let's go ahead and transition to that Myrtle Beach name because he threw the same exact day as Riley Thompson. Brody McCullough threw for the Myrtle Beach Pelicans. He threw, and he ended up going 3 2/3 innings. He gave up 1 hit and 0 earned runs, struck out 5 and walked 1. You want to talk about him, or you want me to start?
Yeah, just maybe really quickly. I'll kind of throw from the draft side. So he was a 10th round pick out of Wingate University, so a D2 school. A bit of a money saver. So he's an interesting one that, like, I don't think the draft used to be held in June. Now it's in July. There's good and bad with that, but he's an interesting case study where I don't think if the draft was being held in June, he was getting drafted. And that's just my anecdote. That's not anything that I've heard. But he's the guy that went to the Cape Cod League. And that was the first time. Some D2 schools totally have data. They've got TrackMan. They've got all that kind of stuff. But not all of them do. And that was the first time he really threw with like really concentrated like data. He actually his whole team met with driveline instructors. And they made some like quick tweaks on the side. And he had a great Cape Cod League. There have been a few people that have written for like Prospects Live, Baseball America, that have called him out at the time during the Cape that were like, hey, this guy's looking really good out of a D2 school. Cubs ended up picking him. Had multiple people send me messages like, oh, I saw him on the Cape. Like, he was really good. We're seeing that now. Like, he had a brief stint last year in the major, or in the major, sorry. I think in Myrtle Beach. And so the question was like, yeah, like, is he a reliever? Is he a starter? But he's coming with 5 pitches, and I thought he looked good. What are your thoughts? Because I know you kind of like the quirkiness.
Yeah, so I like the quirkiness about Brody. He was another guy that I didn't, like you mentioned, I didn't know if he was going to be used as a starter or as a reliever this year. I think I might have picked him, or I thought about picking him for some reliever leader categories for over at Northside Bound when we did the preseason predictions, or mentioned him in my breakout performer or something. I threw his name around there because I was really excited to see what he would do, regardless of if it was as a one inning reliever, a multi-inning reliever, as a starting pitcher. We're seeing him as a starter, which is super fun. He's another guy that just a quirky kind of arm slot, a quirky delivery. I really like that. And I think that I don't know if you know the answer to this, but you seem like the guy to ask. When I was watching him throw his start this time, it looked like he had some cut right action on his fastball. I don't know if he has that going on.
I need to see more information. He has thrown a couple pitches that I thought had that movement, but I don't have the numbers because it's really, really hard to find. So I will actually look on that. That does remind me. I actually have some drive line stuff I need to pull
and
up.
it's sometimes super hard to like see it with your eye, like see it happening. But I was just watching some of his fastballs, and I was like, it kind of looks a little cut rightish to me. So
yeah, I think it's I think it's got a smidge of cut. I'm not sure about the ride, but I'll look into that because I know I saw you post that and I'm like, that is probably, I think I'm so used to seeing it now that I don't even blink when I kind of see these cut ride guys because it almost feels like that's exactly what it is. We're not going to talk about this guy, but Cohen Moreno, and I did put this out there. He's got cut ride. He was.
You want to explain real quick to the people out there that might not know what cut ride is?
And I will do it. I'll do it really quick. So here's the thing: when somebody throws a straight four seam fastball, pick a right-hander, a straight four seam fastball. What we see as straight actually moves into a right-handed hitter about 7 inches. Believe it or not. So it's very strange. It looks like it's going straight down the gun. It actually moves 7 inches into a right-hander. So what we've seen the Cubs do, and there's some data on why we think they do this here at Northside Bound, and we've got a follow-up piece on this coming here shortly, is that if you can manipulate the ball so that as you throw it, instead of going 7 inches into a right-hander, it may only go 3 or 4 inches into a right-hander, which doesn't seem like a big difference, but it gives the illusion. Remember, hitters are doing thousands and thousands of pitches. This is muscle memory. They see this visual memory, and it gives the illusion of it cutting 4 inches. And so just like cutters, those act as damage suppressors. So they naturally generate like weaker contact. And turns out even better than cutters, true cutters, are these kind of gyro spin or cut ride fastballs. So the cut is that part relative cut. A ride means it actually gives the rise illusion. The best example of this in the system is Justin Steele. That's like from the left-hand side. That's the guy to watch for.
And we talk about Justin Steele being a guy that it's like how does he just generate such good weak contact? And it's like that's why. That's exactly why. So
it's a wicked slider and a cut ride fastball.
Actually, my favorite part about that is for the YouTube watchers out there getting the performance from you actually throwing the cut ride fastball. I appreciate that. That's good.
I'm definitely. You could stack me next to the Cubs pitchers. You couldn't even distinguish.
Couldn't tell the difference. Yeah. I was most impressed with Brody's command on this night this past week. I thought it was exceptional. Whether it was the fastball, the curve, I'd have to go back and check. I think that every single curveball that he threw was down out of the zone, which is exactly what you want to see. He was getting and not only out of the. I mean, you don't want to throw curveballs for balls. You want to throw curveballs down out of the zone and get swings and misses on those balls. And he was doing that. He was getting swings and misses on the curveball down in the dirt, almost every single pitch, if it wasn't every single pitch. And that was phenomenal. And then the changeup, he was dotting the changeup on the black.
That was really impressive.
Really good to lefty hitters. Brody's a righty thrower. So he's throwing that to lefty hitters on the outside part of the plate. He was just dotting it there. I thought his command was tremendous. I can't imagine we can expect that every single outing because that's what made that performance so impressive to me was just his command. Yeah,
I mean, he's definitely a guy that I'm actually pretty excited about. We have to at least acknowledge the age factor, against like low A hitters. But you know what? You want to see them perform. Like you can't hold that against him. So just kind of watch and see him perform. I'm pulling up his data right now, and that's what I'm just trying to look at really, really quickly here.
I think
fastest they're going to look at.
I think Brody McCullough is a guy that because he's a college arm and he's starting the year in Myrtle Beach, we can kind of expect him to climb the ladder in the way that we saw a lot of Myrtle Beach guys last year, right? We saw the entire Myrtle Beach rotation start there to begin the year, and then by about the halfway point, or a little bit after, made their way up to South Bend. I think that's kind of the projection that we can expect from Brody McCullough this year.
Yeah, and really quick, I didn't get the numbers, but I'm eyeballing the visual reports, and it does look like it's got a relative cut to it. Yep, nice job. That's pretty good.
That's expert level scouting from Greg Huster.
I mean, yeah, that was nicely done.
That's the first time I've ever been able to say that. So, all right, man. You want to talk? I'm gonna lump these next two guys kind of in the same conversation. I think it's appropriate. We got Ryan Jensen and Ben Brown. Both guys throwing in AA Tennessee. Both guys on the 40-man roster. Both had similar types of nights on the bump this past week. I'll run through the numbers real quick and then kind of kick it to you here. Ben Brown went 4 innings pitched, 0 hits, 0 earned runs, 6 strikeouts, and 4 walks, which is out of character from what we saw from him last year. And then Ryan Jensen was 4 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 5 strikeouts, 1 walk, which is actually a little out of character as well, the other way for Ryan Jensen. I think that if you flip those lines for Ben Brown and Ryan Jensen, that's what you would have seen from them last year.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, both good nights, but totally did it a different way. You know, I think just really quick, because I don't want us to belabor this too much, but like, still pretty high on Ryan Jensen, higher than I had been in previous years. I know you were the captain of that ship, but I think there's a mix there to be a really good debut as a multi-inning reliever, and then maybe more. But like, I think there's a good mix there. Ben Brown, I think we're going to see more nights like this for a bit as he's still trying to work on that expanded repertoire. Because I'm pretty sure he can already go out there and go fastball, breaking ball, and manipulate it a little bit and do exactly what he's done last year. But if he wants to take that next level, that's the expanded thing. And I think he's going to have some misses with some breaking balls.
Yeah, I mean, remember last year from Ben Brown, we saw a performance in as far as strikeouts and walk ratio that was, I believe it was the best in the system, and
for starters, yeah,
and by a long shot too. Like it was really impressive what he did last year. It was kind of like what we saw from Caleb Killian a couple of years ago, but better. Which is why he walked more guys, but not many more guys, and he struck out quite a few more than what Killian did a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that stat, and Greg Huss is the king of stats for Northside Bound, and so really want to give you a huge shout out for that, because I know you're already doing that stuff this year. But yeah, like the stat he's alluding to is that K percentage minus walk percentage, and it's a very predictive stat. So like if you're looking at guys like who are the best ones, look for guys that are getting a bunch of Ks and limiting those walks. Makes sense conceptually.
That's what FIP is built off of. That's what a lot of the ERA type numbers that are not ERA are built off of that. Right? It's taking the batted ball metrics or the batted ball oddities out of the equation. So yeah, I think both those guys, I think that we've kind of we talked about them a lot. I mean, they're more well-known names that are on the 40-man roster. So we won't stick on them too long. The last guy I do want to talk about is arguably my favorite pitcher in the entire system, my highest ranked pitcher in the entire system, Jordan Wicks. Wicks went out, and I have him grouped here with the kind of strong performers of the week. It was a weird outing from him, and it sucks because it's coming off of a year that saw more bad luck, and I think we saw some more of it this week. Jordan Wicks ended up putting up a line in Tennessee of 3 2/3 innings pitched, 6 hits, and he gave up 4 runs, but 0 of them were earned runs. 0 earned runs, 4 strikeouts, 1 walk. This dude got bit by like really bad like BABIP luck last year. This year this night it was a lot of the same, right? Where like I think it was like the first 3 and maybe a third innings, or at least the first 3 innings, he did not make any poor pitches. He was hitting his spots. He was not getting beats. Like I think that he did everything he needed to do for the first like 3 1/3 innings. And then there was a couple errors. I think on the night the Smokies ended up having 4 errors or something like that. It was a bad night defensively, but he ran into a couple different errors and then some light contact. There was a rolling dribbler to third base that the third baseman couldn't make a play on, like a lot of that. And it's so unfortunate. I thought he looked really, really strong on this first night of the year.
Yeah, I mean, so this is gonna sound super pessimistic, but hang with me here. Like, I think we're gonna see more nights like that you look at it and you're like, damn, Wicks pitched like really well. He just got terrible luck, because Jordan Wicks is super divided, right? Like we're kind of diving into that for the site for like, what's the division? Where's the disconnect on Jordan Wicks is going to be the title of the piece. And
nice.
Lance Berzdowski kind of did touch in on this a little bit. And I've talked to Lance about this, and we've been kind of batting these things around. But part of it is the fact that like his stuff is very east and west, so his sweeper's pretty out there. He does have his sinker as well. The four seam is looking good, but he added that cutter recently, which there's a great piece on Prospects Live about like bridging horizontally, which I don't want to go into it too much. We'll go on forever. But the point is that the cutter's got a really nice roll there. Cutter is really good at suppressing damage, but you can totally just get like crappy luck sometimes. And we saw that with like John Lester, right? Like I'm not comping Wicks to Lester.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we are. Anything less than a John Lester like Cubs career is just a complete flop. Sorry. No. But like you saw him, John Lester could have dominating starts. And then he would have times where like he pitched fine. What the hell happened? And it was just this like crappy luck where all of a sudden there's 5 runs in the first inning. And it's like he didn't miss a pitch except for maybe one. I think there's just going to be some nights on that. And you just hope that the bulldog on the mound that is Jordan Wicks emulates the bulldog that was John Lester and just, works through it and gets through those weird games, because he's going to have some really, really good ones too. Really good ones.
We talked about it here, whether it's me and you or with Brian or with Jordan Wicks on the show, that he is the easiest player in the system to tell when he's working on something. Like you can, it's clear as day that like, I know like the development's not linear. Like guys are working, like it's not about results. It's about the working on specific things. Like it is so clear to see when he's working on stuff. Like we saw it last year when he just took the changeup out of the equation so he could focus on his breaking ball. On this night, this first week of the year, very clearly working on the top half of the zone on the fastball. It wasn't like he was like leaving them up on accident. Like he was the four-seam fastball up every single pitch. It was I love to see that. And then the slider, back foot sliders to right-handed batters, clearly working on that too. And then incorporating all the other pitches pretty evenly. The changeup, the curveball, the cutter. It was very clear to see what he was doing. And like I don't know what that tells you as an opposing batter, but all I know is I love that he goes into every start with a game plan, even in the minor leagues.
Yep, I agree. The Cubs took him in the first round for a reason. He was advanced. They still added a bunch of pitches to his repertoire. I mean, he and the Cubs added it. And I mean, we're seeing it. This guy is knocking on the door. He needs some refinement, but he is clearly set about as a plan to do that.
All right, buddy. You good with pitching talk? Any other pitchers you want to hit on?
Oh, man. Pitching is great. Can't wait to see the next round of starters.
All right, let's transition over to the hitters because there were some fun hitting things going on in the system this week too. And I think we should start off with what I think was probably the most exciting part of the week that was minor league baseball. Pablo Aliendo, the Tennessee Smokies, he's the man. Tennessee Smokies go into the bottom of the ninth down 4 runs. Really not just a really not strong night from the Smokies, and it were kind of an off week from the Smokies to start off for a team that is one of the most talented team rosters in all of minor league baseball. Invite you guys out there to go listen to the Call Up podcast by the guys over at Just Baseball Media. They ran through all of the strongest rosters in minor league baseball. Tennessee Smokies was the team that RM was most excited about, which is awesome. But Pablo Aliendo comes up to bat. Well, they end up putting up some runs in that 9th inning, capped off by a walk-off 3-run home run from Pablo Aliendo. Super exciting to see that in general. And I guess we can talk about that, but also I want to talk about the fact that Pablo looks more impressive. I think the body looks better. Like dating back a couple of years ago and even last year, he was just a really skinny catcher. He was a young guy. He looks more built. He looks like he's ready to kind of deal with the rigors of an entire minor league season, maybe an entire major league season. Like I just really like what we've seen from Pablo Aliendo. Yeah,
man, he just looks like he's starting to get the frame of a catcher. And we talked about this on that fantasy draft. Team Huss, Team Zumach, Team Smith, where it was like, if I would be shocked if the Cubs do not have, this isn't the most exciting thing, but like a legitimate backup catcher, second string catcher that is going to play for like 10 years in the majors. I would actually be shocked if there is not one in the system, because I think there's a host of guys. And honestly, Pablo Aliendo might be one of the best picks for that. Ethan Hearn's another good one too. But we could rattle it off. There's a bunch of them. But like Pablo looking like this, looking like with some added strength, he's already like a big time guy behind the plate for his pitchers. So I'm digging it.
I think that you're looking at Yan Gomes and Tucker Barnhart in the major leagues right now. I think in 3 years, would you be content after seeing this Yan Gomes and Tucker Barnhart tandem? Not after seeing the Wilson Contreras the past several years, but after seeing this, I mean, you'd be pretty content with seeing Miguel Amaya and Pablo Aliendo up in the current Tennessee catchers up in the big leagues for a few years, right?
Yeah, I would. I think that the Cubs went super quick, like off the tirade, whatever thing is that like Wilson Contreras, I think, surprised the Cubs development staff, right? Like he put in the work, he did everything. He went from guys maybe something to holy crap, he's one of the best catchers in the major leagues and all this stuff. It's amazing. He didn't exemplify the qualities I think that the Cubs were looking for. They went out there and got like the David Ross, they got Miggy Montero. They've since gone out and got Yan Gomes, Tucker Barnhart, like all these
Alex Avila. Yeah.
Alex Avila, like these other qualities that you kind of can lump all these people into one thing. Wilson does great things. I hope he does less great things all the time right now. I mean, no offense. But like he does great things, but he does very different things. And I think the people in the minors right now, Miguel Amaya, Pablo Aliendo, Ethan Hearn, Bryce Wyndham. There's more that those look like this other bucket of players that have played in the majors for a really long time.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. That's a really good point. All right, so I mentioned that I was over in the Quad Cities. I mentioned I was there for pregame, and my biggest takeaway, I tweeted this out, was that Kevin Alcantara is a very large man. Kevin Alcantara is huge. I mean, he's huge, but he still has plenty of room to grow, and he moves super, super well, super fluid, super smooth out there in center field. Like he's very clearly a guy that's destined for right field. But just the fact that he can play center field right now at 6'6", 6'5".
Yeah, it's right around there. Yeah.
But it feels like he's 6'9". It's just the fact that he's out there playing center field is nothing short of miraculous, to be completely honest with you. With that being said, Haydn McGeary makes Kevin Alcantara look small. Haydn McGeary is the biggest dude I have ever seen, like on a baseball field ever. Like he is so big, and I think the thing with Haydn is that he is not only damn near just as tall as Kevin Alcantara, he is strong, man. Like he's wide, like broad shoulders. Like he is a big dude. I'll get out in front. I mean, I think that you and I have gotten so many questions about like, is Haydn McGeary going to stick at catcher? Is he going to continue playing behind the plate? The answer is no. Like I'm here to tell you no. Like I've not talked to front office people that have told me that. I'm here. I saw him in person for the first time on Sunday. I'm telling you, no, he will not be behind the plate. You don't see guys built like that behind the plate. It just doesn't exist. Like Matt Wieters was that way, but like I wouldn't even say Matt Wieters was this big. Like he was tall, but like he's not this big. So
Daniel Susac last year in the draft but that was the discussion at the time, because people were like, catchers don't really look like that. Like he's really good, but there were teams that were like, he's not doing it. It goes exactly to your point that it's just very, very uncommon.
Yeah. So I think he still has some work to do over at first base. I think that defensively he has some work. But if he can continue to hit, I think that he makes really strong contact, really hard contact, and that goes a long ways, right? That duo, I think, and we talked about Luke Little earlier. The Luke Little, Haydn McGeary, Kevin Alcantara, 3-on-3 basketball team. You can't beat that.
I mean, God forbid Luke Little accidentally leaves a fastball up and hits a guy, and somebody makes the boneheaded decision to charge the mound because they might pick up the pieces of them later.
Yeah,
I think they just wouldn't advise.
Anything else you want to hit on with either of those two guys before we move on to the different stature?
Super fun. This is going to be great. I just going to be digging watching them all summer. There's going to be some growing pains, especially with Kevin Alcantara. But man, you know what? Just buckle up. It's the year of the Jaguar. I really am just so excited. let's wait to see what the line looks like when, it's warmer in the Midwest. But man, yeah, he's so fun to watch. Both of them.
Where do you expect Alcantara and McGeary to end up the season?
I think okay, so South Bend. I think Tennessee is going to be in the playoffs, and the Cubs have liked bringing guys up, even towards the end of the season to let them like have some time in the playoffs. South Bend could do it too, but that really wouldn't surprise me to see. Definitely McGeary, but like Kevin Alcantara get some time in the playoffs.
I'll put a like early August call up on Alcantara.
I love it.
McGeary is a different thing, right? This is his first full season. He is a college guy. I don't want to put a prediction on him for the call up because we don't know. I mean, he's not a top 20 prospect in all of baseball like Alcantara is, in my opinion. Right. That's just different. But I can see Alcantara early August call up to Tennessee. He's already in the 40-man roster, which like that doesn't really affect the development path and like where the Cubs want to see him. But it's just like there's all the confidence in the world in him very clearly. So like I think that we see him sooner rather not. I mean, I think some people are expecting to see him up in Tennessee like tomorrow.
Oh God, yeah,
like that's not gonna happen. But I could see it earlier than the playoff run.
Dude, I dig it. I think it's possible that he comes up and like he could be the center fielder in Tennessee when PCA gets some time up in Triple or in the majors.
Yeah. All right, let's go from two dudes who are the biggest in the system to a guy who is very small. Pedro Ramirez is starting second baseman for the Myrtle Beach Pelicans. And this first week he looked phenomenal. He was spraying singles all over the place. That's what he's known to do, right? That's what he does. Yep. Is he hits the ball where it's pitched, goes over the shortstop's head, goes over the second baseman's head. That's where he lives. First of all, I want to kick it to you for like how fun of a brand of a style of baseball that is.
Dude, it's a callback. It's a callback to a game that 15, 20 years ago he'd be viewed as like one of the top people. And I mean, I will say that there are some people outside of the Cubs that do feel that way. This isn't like off the record stuff. This is an article by Mason McRae, who typically does draft stuff, but he'll dive into the prospect things and had Pedro Ramirez as a top 100 prospect because he's like, hey, I know he's in Arizona, but like what this guy is doing is really impressive. I think that's probably the extreme view of him. But yeah, he's spraying the ball all over the place. Like he's fun. And I love dingers, but like it's also good when you can just be spraying the ball all over the place too. You gotta mix it.
I love dingers.
Hashtag to the Dingers podcast, of course.
There you go. I'm curious. I don't know, man. I love it. Like I love watching it. It's a blast. He is a great brand of baseball to watch. Yeah. With that being said, to rein it in a little bit, I think that I love just picking brains of prospect writers and prospect followers, especially other people that follow the Cub system, you and Todd and Brian and just everybody. And something that I have taken away most from Mike Ernst is he always talks about how you got to be very careful when you evaluate a hit tool first second baseman.
Oh, 100%, man.
And that's been my biggest lesson learned from him. And now I'm ultra careful about it, right? So like you got dating back to I always got to bring up Chesney Young on this podcast because like that was a guy that as I was, I mean, a little bit later than I would like to admit that I was high on him because he had that great hit tool and was just hitting the ball all over the field with singles up to Double-A. Another example that once was Chase Strumpf, right? And then he reinvented himself, and now he's a power first guy, and playing some third base too. So his profile is a little bit different, but he did have to reinvent himself in order to be still on the map where he's at today.
Yep.
So I'm just a little worried about Pedro Ramirez and him being a hit tool first second baseman that doesn't really play a super strong defensive second base And also, like, because of his size, I'm worried about his power tool ever playing up.
Yeah, I mean, so I saw him down in Arizona, and shagging or fielding ground balls. I actually thought like he was out at short. I actually thought he was a little bit better than he looks sometime in game. I don't think he's got the range. He's not a shortstop. No, I totally agree with you. I think it's totally fair to look at things and say, hey, if you got a hit tool that's leading the pack, it needs to be really plus to be a second baseman. I think his age helps. Like that really does matter a lot. And so, I'm cautiously optimistic, but he's not a top guy to me. Like, I think he's certainly a prospect. He's absolutely somebody that garners attention, but he's not somebody that I'm pumping on my top 15.
You know what? Actually, like I think I do this without thinking too much about it. I'm if a guy like Pedro Ramirez or the older version or the past version of Chase Strumpf, if they can hit for contact the way they do and draw walks, huge difference, dude. Like huge difference. If you're relying on the hit tool to drive up your OBP, kind of like what Nico Horner has been in the past, but I feel confident in Nico like drawing walks, and that's a different type of hit tool. That's different. But like I think that another example of this as a guy coming up to the system, I think you know where I'm going, is Albert Almora, where his hit tool had to drive up the OBP. He had to be hitting 295 in order to have an on-base percentage that was worthwhile. And because he wasn't also hitting the ball hard and hitting the ball with authority, then as he climbed the ladder, his batting average went down and down and down until he was batting 230 in the major leagues with a 260 on-base percentage because he wasn't drawing walks.
And reinventing his swing every single spring training.
Yeah, so that's going to be important to watch. I think both of those things are going to be important to watch with Pedro. Is he driving the ball with authority? Not only is he making the contact, but is he putting it in the gaps in left and right center field instead of just putting it over the shortstop and second baseman's head? And also, can he draw walks more than what like we're kind of seeing from him very early on in his career?
Yep.
All right, man. Anything else that you want to talk about before we get into a couple draft pieces?
No, I think it's great.
All right. So because you're on, I think that we'll probably do this every time you're on the show here leading up to the draft. I want to end this episode with 2 questions about draft talk. The first of which is I'll just lay them out individually here. The first and then kick them your way. The first of which is I would love to get one player that you could picture the Cubs drafting in the first round of the draft come this July.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's jump into that. Sorry, I didn't know if we were going to the next question too. But okay. Well, I feel like I'm going to spoil my mock a little bit, which is going to come out here later this week or early next, but fairly soon. That's mock 2.0 on the site. But hang in here because it'll be worth diving into and checking out the whole piece. Is I could really see the Cubs taking shortstop, Parkview High School, down in Georgia. So high school player Colin Hook. Really love the profile. He's playing like he should be picked right in that area. The defense has looked really good. I've asked around to folks down in Georgia. Not saying this is like inside Cubs information, but just like people that have actually watched him. Like how does Hook look? And they're like amazing. Like he's just looking so good right now. He's really cementing his status as a first round pick. And this is a really strong high school shortstop class. Like this isn't 2021, which was historic. There's 8 first round high school shortstops that had never been done. The previous high was 5. This is a year that probably gets to about 5. It's just a really strong group, and that's even factoring in a really strong college group. So there's probably some people out here that are like, why not this player? And you know what? He limited me to 1. I'm going to go with Colin Hook. I could see that as a really good pick that would make a lot of sense.
So you mentioned the defense. What's the hitting profile with him?
He does both. I mean, he hits for power and average. And I mean, when we say average, we're mostly talking like the hit tool. It's good on both sides. I mean, when we're talking about like a mid first round pick from a high school player, where the power isn't plus, it's very similar to how I viewed Colson Montgomery, which is maybe an unfair comparison now, but how I looked at him then, in 2021, ironically, where probably above average hit, above average power is how I'd view long-term projection. Colson, I was pretty sure was going to end up at third, and I think he still will. Hook, I'm a little bit less sure he's going to end up at third. I think there's is a better chance that he could stick up the middle. So yeah, I really like the profile there.
I love it. All right. So going from one guy you see the Cubs drafting in the first round to I love, I mean, like, one of my favorite things in talking to you is like your guy, right? I mean, like you always have your guys that you want the Cubs to draft, whether it's the first round or later rounds. I mean, it could be the 10th round. I don't care. I want to hear from you one guy that you would love, like you personally would love to see the Cubs draft no matter the round.
Yeah. I have not had a good sense of how people view this player, but when I look at him, and then I occasionally like will dip into the rankings and like see where other people have him, I just like it does not jive. It feels like a couple hundred picks off, and that is Georgia Tech shortstop Christian Campbell. He came into the year with some questions because he redshirted last year, actually. And so there's some questions, right? Like, how is he going to adjust to ACC ball? That's a pretty big adjustment. It's not SEC, but it's pretty darn close. And so he's looked great. Probably one of his bigger questions entering the year was like, there's a little bit of swing and miss. Like if you look at Prospects Live, who does great draft work, that was what they had noted earlier in the year. Is like, we're worried about the swing and miss. The guy is rocking a like 16% walk rate to 3% K rate. That's pretty ridiculous. Like I had to look at those.
That's wild.
Yeah, I had to like go and actually just hand calculate those to make sure that it was right. It was nuts. It's just absolutely nuts. And so I would take him in the third round and not think twice. He is a very tall framed shortstop that I think some people question whether he's going to stick it short. That's really common in college. Probably like a second baseman or third baseman. I don't really care. I think the profile is really, really good. He's a guy I would take in the third round and not even think twice. There is some questions about whether he fits the profile of a guy that would probably potentially go back to school, and try to play his way into the second round or even better. I think a smart organization, and I'm hoping that's the Cubs, just convinces him, here's a really damn good offer. Take this right now. Let's get you into the development system, and let's see him, because he's a bit of a slasher, but he started to elevate to his pull side, and it's looking really good. I think it's going to look really, really good. He's not a home run guy too much now. I think there's only like 3 or 4 on the season, but I just feel really good about Christian Campbell.
I love it. That's going to be we're going to, every time you come on before the draft, that's going to be a thing. I love.
I'll have new names for you. Yep.
Yeah. Well, a lot changes between now and you'll be back on in a few weeks, and so a lot changes between now and then. This is this season where college baseball is going on, high school baseball is going on. It's just like it gets crazy between now and July. So there's plenty of names out there that you are well aware of. Do you have any I can start off. Do you have any shout outs that you want to give out? I tried starting this with Brian last week. I can give one now.
Yeah, go for it.
And then let you think. You also don't have to have one. That's totally fine.
I'll think about it.
I want to give a shout out to just I think that the Cubs prospect community in general. I tweeted this out a couple of days ago, but because I was not watching the games live on Friday and Saturday, I went back and paid attention. Went back and watched and paid attention to them after the fact. Like, it's pretty amazing that I can just log on to Twitter or log on to the Rich Deanna's Facebook group and play catch up.
That's who I was going to pick.
Well, I'll reverse that. You can give more love his way. You can give more love his way. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm focusing on the Twitter list that I made. I made just a list of a whole bunch of just Cubs prospect tweeters, because I basically what I did on Friday night was I went back, I went back to the first pitch of the first game that went off. I scrolled backwards, and I scrolled through. It was just watching a highlight reel of all the action going on throughout the night, and it was amazing. I think there's so many impressive people that follow the system so in depth that I'm sure listening to this podcast. That I just think that it's incredible what they do, and the community that's been built through this.
Yeah, I think the community, the fans, people that actually care and want to talk about it, and we'll get in our DMs, I'm sure yours as well, and just be like, hey, like, what did this guy do, or whatever. I mean, I think there's just so many passionate people now that, it's just really fun. I do want to give a shout out to Rich Deanna. I think he does a great job of, building a community. There's a community on Facebook, but also just on Twitter. I think he does an awesome job at that. I'll give a different shout out, just kind of a piggy, a separate thing that we talked about. I'm really digging the functionality on the MiLB and trying to watch games. I think Major League Baseball does some crappy things sometimes. And the oversight of the minor leagues, I don't think was flawless. It wasn't. But I think that they are trying to bring minor league baseball a little bit better just through technology. I'm not going to say anything else about stuff to the fans. I think they're doing a good job of trying to deliver that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call. Really good call. Yep. All right, you got anything to plug? You've mentioned a few different articles. I can't imagine they're all coming out in the next week, but what you got as far as work over?
No, a couple things coming out. So the mock is coming out. I've been working on that for a while. It's a problem because I ask people things and then I, have to change people on the rank. It's just annoying as all heck. It's helpful, but it's annoying. So that should be coming out shortly. Then there will be a couple pieces diving into the disconnect on Jordan Wicks, as well as just an update on gyrospin fastballs, which I don't know when that's going to come out. I kind of want that to time it where it's can get the love it deserves, if I can say that. But yeah, I'd say the mock is the one to be looking out for first. And yeah, we're just going to have some fun. We're going to have some fun on the site, just diving into some different stuff.
So you can find that over at northsidebound.com. You can find Greg Zumach over at Ivy Futures on Twitter. And as far as I go, I will be pretty soon here. We're looking at it's Monday as we're recording. I was waiting to get a little bit of minor league action under our belt before I pop the stats up on our website. Mm-hmm. But it's super fun because this year I haven't posted this yet. I don't think so. If you guys are listening, you're hearing this first now. But the stats tab over at our website at northsidebound.com will be functional in terms of updating every single day this year, as opposed to last year. I had to manually do it. I tried to manually do it once a week. Every once in a while, it was every 2 weeks. Sometimes it was longer than that. But now it is automatic. It's going to update every single day with new stats, with whatever happened the previous night. So you can go on, you can see hitting stats, you can see pitching stats. Included on the hitting stats will be my new developed metric bash that will be on there, so you can follow players' bash throughout the season as it wears on, which is super fun. Be sure to give that a check on the website. I don't know what day that's going to go live. Like I said, I want to see a few more. There's still a few players that I know are on rosters that have not gotten into games yet, and I kind of want to see that happen. I want to see everybody that's on a roster getting a game. So once that happens, I will throw them up on the website, and it should be fun. So you can follow me on Twitter at Out of the Vines. You can find this podcast anywhere where you listen to podcasts. You can find us on YouTube. You can see our beautiful faces on YouTube. Be sure to give us a rating and a review. Comment on the YouTube page. That always helps. That's always fun. Give it a like.
Oh, yeah.
We always appreciate interacting with you guys too. Both Zumach and myself get those notifications on the YouTube page. So both of us can reply to any comments you guys have on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back with Brian Smith as my co-host in one short week. Thanks, guys.